What's up, boxing fans? This is TBE Boxing, back at you again. Today's topic, Yourdenis Ugas will never get a decision against Errol Spence. He must stop Spence to keep his new belt. Let's chop it up and see what it's all about.
Got the money for minutes, pretty bitch, gotta show me titties. This is the life that I chose, huh? On the block with the pole, huh? This is the life that I chose, huh? On the block with the pole, huh? That life for riches, huh? That life for riches, huh? Pretty bitch, show me titties, huh? And I got the glizzy, run up on me, I'ma make you get it. I'ma make you get it.
Okay, boxing fans, let's talk some boxing today. We're gonna chop it up. All right. So the latest news out there, as you all know, is that Manny Pacquiao has been, for all intents and purposes, stripped of the WBA title, even though it's not necessarily technically him being stripped. It's more of he's a champion in recess who could actually come back and actually demand a fight, and he would be in #1 position to regain his title if he choose to do that. Okay, but currently, Yourdenis Ugas, Cuban fighter, is currently the WBA super champion, and there's talk about him doing some unification with Errol Spence. So that should be pretty interesting. Now, you know, we saw Yourdenis Ugas before, and you know, several fights. I saw him in a fight with Thomas Delorme. For those of you who don't know, Thomas Delorme had lost a fight to Terence Crawford in the 6th round of their match at 140 pounds. Delorme was stopped by Terence Crawford, and he basically went the distance with Yourdenis Ugas in a tough fight between those two at welterweight. Delorme got dropped twice in the earlier rounds by Ugas, but he came on later in the fight, and it was a tough fight. He won a lot of later rounds in a tough fight against Ugas. Okay, so it was a pretty good fight. But as I said, Delorme was stopped by Crawford, but he went the distance with Ugas. Now, Ugas also fought Jamal James in another fight where he won, and he's been on a winning streak since his loss to Sean Porter. I mean, basically, the fight with Porter, many people would say that Ugas actually won that fight. I saw that fight, and I thought Ugas eked out a victory in that fight, but the judges gave it to Sean Porter. I mean, Sean Porter was the champion, so maybe they gave the edge to the champion, but they usually give the edge to the champion in terms of if he's the more aggressive person to fight, even if he might not necessarily outpoint the other guy. You might give him points for aggression and the fact that he's a champion and all of that. But in that fight, Ugas was the aggressive guy as far as I can see, and I would think that he outpointed Sean Porter in that fight. But again, it could have went either way. I mean, if I would have rather seen Ugas get a draw in that fight as opposed to a loss, because I think he was closer to a draw than it was to an actual loss for Ugas. But it is what it is. Sean Porter got the fight. He got the decision. I mean, we all know, Sean Porter was a favorite in that fight. And so Porter, got the decision. Now, if there is to be a unification bout between Ugas and Spence, and if that fight was to go the distance, we all know that Ugas is not going to get the decision. Okay, he didn't get the decision against Crawford. He's definitely not going to get the decision against Spence. So the only way for him to keep his belt in a fight against Errol Spence, he's going to have to stop Spence or get as close to stopping Spence as you can get. I mean, the fight has to be overwhelmingly lopsided for him to get a decision against Spence, I would think. Because Spence is going to be the favorite. Okay, he's the cash cow for PBC right now. And, even though the belt would be in-house, if Ugas was to win, I would think that again Spence would be the favorite, not just among the fans, but among the boxing community as well. Uh, it would be an interesting fight to say the least. I mean, a lot of people are jumping for joy right now because Ugas got the title. A lot of them see that they see a fight between Spence and Ugas as an easy win for Spence. Okay, no one out there, whether in the whether the LDBC, the YTBC, or casual fans, really think that Ugas will win against Spence. So everybody is looking forward to this fight because they think that Spence is going to win it, especially the LDBC, and the Spence Protection Brigade. Now a lot of these guys didn't want to see Crawford fight Spence, and there's all kind of roadblocks that were put in front of the fight. 60-40 at the other side of the street, 70-30. Business, heavy lifting, pay-per-view star, all of these different reasons they was putting in there. He should fight Porter first. They were saying that Crawford should jump through all these hoops before he can fight Spence. But you don't hear none of this about Ugas. Okay, they all want Ugas to fight Spence because naturally they think Spence is gonna win. They wasn't so sure about a Crawford Spence fight. They didn't think that Spence was gonna necessarily, beat Crawford, or they didn't think that Spence would be the favorite to beat Crawford. So they were reluctant to see that fight happen. To say the least, and that's putting it mildly. They did everything in their power to make sure that fight never happened. And I'm talking about the LDBC, and the Spence Protection Brigade that's out there trying to, that was trying to stop that fight. But now all of these guys are jumping for joy because they think that Errol Spence, is going to walk over Yourdenis Ugas, and he's going to add another belt to his repertoire of belts. And now that's going to give him another leg up on Terence Crawford. I mean, they're coming out actually saying that in a lot of their comments. I mean, they're jumping around. It's like New Year's, Christmas. These guys are so happy. That Spence is gonna get a leg up on Crawford now in the negotiations. Now Crawford, is gonna have to take the 70-30 or 80-20 or 90-10, whatever Spence decides to give him. This is how these guys are thinking. When it comes to Crawford. I don't understand the hate that these guys have for Crawford. I'll never understand it. I mean, I just don't get it. But for some reason, these guys actually hate Crawford and want to see, they didn't want to see Spence fight Crawford. I think they really hate Crawford because they think he can beat Spence, really, deep down. And no matter what they say about Spence being the A side, or the more experienced at welterweight, or the pay-per-view star at welterweight, or whatever they are they're talking about, deep down, I think that they really believe that Crawford can beat Spence, and that's why they didn't want the fight to happen. Okay? So, it is what it is. But, it's just, I mean, at the end of the day, somebody got to win and somebody got to lose. So why not make the fight happen for these guys? It's the biggest fight at welterweight. Okay? Spence would get a bag of money, so would Crawford, and they both have life-changing, money after a fight like that. The biggest fight in boxing, basically, right now. But, these guys, was doing their best to stand in the way of that fight. Come up with all kind of reasons why the fight should not happen. And, now, I can't just say it's just the fans' fault alone or the LDBC fault because Spence didn't want the fight either. Okay, the biggest fight in boxing for him where he can make the most money, but he didn't want that fight. So now, he's gonna fight Ugas, and we'll see what happens. I mean, in the fight between Porter and Ugas looked pretty good in there against Porter. I mean, much better than Spence did against Porter. Okay, but people say style make fight, so we'll see how it plays out. But from my perspective, I saw that Ugas didn't have such a difficult time against Porter as Errol Spence did. It was a tougher fight between Spence and Porter than it was between Porter and Ugas, as far as I can see. And that's why, I'm saying that, to me, Ugas actually won that fight. But, Porter fought a different strategy. In the fight against Ugas, he stayed in the back foot. He didn't go inside as much, unless he was forced to, or, he just went inside, intermittently to attack every once in a while. But for the most part, he stayed on the outside at range against Ugas. And now, why he fought that way, I mean, I'm not sure. But based on what I saw in the fight, I would think that he thought that Ugas was such a strong fighter that he didn't want to risk staying on the inside too much against Ugas. Because Ugas is kind of he's a pretty good fighter. I mean, he's one of those Cuban fighters. They got skills, but he doesn't have that much power, and that's probably his Achilles heel, is that he doesn't have the power, I could say, a Crawford. Even though he got some good skills. But again, he did go the distance with Delorme, a guy that Crawford stopped. Okay, and I don't know. I mean, him and Spence. I mean, you'd have to make Spence the favorite. I would think that Spence, he's a big guy like Spence, so it's not like Spence is fighting a smaller guy. He might be a little bit smaller than Spence, but just maybe by a half inch, maybe. Okay, so it would be interesting to see how Spence would approach this fight if it were to happen. I'm thinking that Ugas is not going to go quietly. I don't think he's going to lay down for Spence. And so, I think it's probably going to be a pretty good fight. I mean, I think probably a better fight than Danny Garcia fight, because I think Ugas is going to let his hands go, unlike Danny Garcia, who was, reluctant to do that. So it could be a tougher fight for Spence. I mean, than the Danny Garcia fight or even the Sean Porter fight. We don't know. But again, many people think that Ugas is gonna, that Spence is gonna beat Ugas, and that is an easy fight for Spence. Okay, so we'll see if that's the way it actually plays out. But that's what people are thinking, especially the French fanboys. Now, obviously Spence is thinking the same way. But as we already know, Spence thought Porter was going to be an easy fight, and we all saw what happened with that fight. But I'm thinking he thinks Ugas is going to be an easy fight as well. But, I don't think that's necessarily going to be the case. Okay, but but again, that's how he's thinking, because look how fast Ugas didn't have the belt for an hour before Spence was already challenging him and calling him out to fight, and trying to make the fight, as opposed to what he was doing with Terence Crawford. For 3 years he's been dunking Crawford, but he in less than an hour he's making a fight with Ugas. Why would he do something like that? He's gonna get a belt. He would have got a belt from Crawford the same way he's gonna get a belt from Ugas if he was to win. But as we can see, it's because he thinks that Ugas is an easier fight than Crawford. So we see that this whole thing about fighting Crawford was a real issue for Spence. He didn't want that fight, no matter what people kept saying, and he avoided the fight for 3 years. And look how quick he's making the fight with Ugas. He's not negotiating with Ugas in the media by talking about 60-40 before they even get together to negotiate like he did with Crawford. Okay, he's not putting up any roadblocks for the fight. He's not talking about 60-40. He's not talking about he's the A side. He's not talking about he's doing all the heavy lifting. He's not talking about Spence, Ugas gonna have to fight more competition. Who has Ugas fought? He's not talking about Ugas having fought anybody. Okay. So, all of this talk that he had against against Crawford is out the window with Ugas. He doesn't have none of those objections against Ugas. He's ready to fight Ugas yesterday. So we see the difference in the approach with Ugas as opposed to with Crawford in terms of Spence wanting that fight. So we can really say, this goes to show you that Spence never really wanted that fight with Crawford. Okay, and no matter what these fanboys out there saying and the excuses they're making for Spence, he ducked Spence. The excuses they're making for Spence. Spence ducked Crawford for 3 years. Okay, and he's continuing to duck Crawford as we speak. But again, he's eager to go ahead and fight Ugas. Okay, and he's not talking about no 60-40 or that he's the pay-per-view star or that he's the big fish or that he's doing the heavy lifting. We're not hearing none of that. He's ready to make the fight. Now, the ironic thing would be, you know, if now, okay, let me just say something about this fight. This is not going to be a big pay-per-view fight because, you know, regardless of what people are saying, Spence is not really a pay-per-view star, okay? And he's not going to be able to carry this fight with him and Ugas, I don't think. Nobody really knows Ugas that well, you know. I mean, the boxing people know him. I know him, and a lot of people in boxing know him. That, you know, but we're talking about boxing aficionados, people that know boxing. They, they know Ugas, but most of the casual fans don't know who Ugas is. So, you know, this fight is probably not going to be on pay-per-view, and so that means that it's not going to be a lot of money generated for this fight. Okay. You know, not the same kind of money that would be generated for a Crawford-Spence fight. You know, so basically what Spence is doing is risking his title, his 2 titles against a guy, you know, against Ugas for less money than he would have gotten risking his title against Crawford. Okay? So you would think that, you know, he would want to risk the title against a guy like Crawford where he's going to get big money, as opposed to, you know, risking it against Ugas where he's going to get less money. But again, I think that, you know, he doesn't think he can beat Crawford, so he'd rather, you know, win. He'd rather risk it for less money against Ugas because he think he can beat Ugas than risk it against Crawford for more money because he doesn't think he can win against Crawford. Okay, so, you know, it is what it is. I mean, that's his choice to make, but it would be a sad day if he ended up losing against Ugas and then for even less money than he would have made against Crawford, and then Ugas would be the guy in the position now to get the big money fight with Crawford. It would be very ironic if that were to happen. You know, it would be a sad day for Spence, that's for sure. You know, can you imagine that? If he's ducking Crawford all these years, end up going to fight Ugas for less money, and end up losing both his titles against Ugas. Man, that would be something else. I'm not saying I'm hoping that would happen. I'm just saying that it's a possibility. Because regardless of what these fanboys out there thinking that, you know, Ugas, you know, is an easy fight for Errol Spence, you know, I'm not that convinced of it, that it's going to be such an easy fight. I mean, naturally Spence is going to be the favorite, but there's a possibility he can lose. But I don't think most of the fanboys and the Errol Spence protection brigade out there even think that. You know, they think that Ugas is definitely going to lose, which is why they're so eager to see this fight happening between Ugas and Spence. And so Ugas, you know, Spence get another title, and then he could have a one-up on Terence Crawford. That's what they're looking for, and that's what they're glad about, and that's what they're, you know, cheering this fight on for. Okay, you know, the hate for Crawford is real, but I guess, like I said, the hate for Crawford is due to the fact that a lot of these guys believe that Crawford would beat Spence, and so they don't want to see that fight under any circumstances. And I don't think Spence does either. I don't think he wants to fight with Crawford. Okay, you know, so we'll see what happens. You know, it should be interesting. Now, it's also a possibility that Ugas could end up fighting Crawford instead of fighting Spence. I mean, that could happen as well. We don't know. You know, even though both of these guys are in the PBC, it's a possibility that Ugas doesn't have really a promoter. You know, he's independent when it comes to that, so he can negotiate with Bob Arum and get a fight with Crawford instead of getting a fight with Spence if they're offering more money. You know, not that we think that Bob Arum is going to do that. We don't. I mean, I'm not. You know, I mean, even though that would be a good strategy in terms of getting the fight with Ugas, getting that other belt, and now it'll be 2 belts, you know, come together between Errol Spence and Crawford. But we'll see how it plays out if it actually happens that way. I'm not saying that's where it's going to happen, but it could happen that way. So nothing is like a foregone conclusion until the fight is actually made between Ugas and Spence. Okay, like I said, it could be a fight between Ugas and Crawford as opposed to Ugas and Spence. Anything could happen. So we'll see how it plays out. Okay. Again, Ugas and Spence might, you know, there might be the next fight coming up because Ugas is saying he's ready for unification. He doesn't want to wait. Okay, so that would mean that the next fight, it would be, and Spence is showing eagerness for this fight as opposed to the lack of eagerness he was shown to fight Crawford. So this fight could happen, you know, pretty soon. Okay, if that's the case. Okay, so we'll see how it plays out. I'm going to keep an eye on it. I'll make sure I let you guys know what the latest is. I'm not going to spend much time on this. So basically that's all I have for right now. This is TBE Boxing. That's all I have. I'm out.